is being recorded.
Thanks, Tim. This meeting is about explanation about requirements or what's the new feature that we have added with respect to relationship requirements and capabilities. Let me tell that why we need this kind of use case. Earlier we had a use case of a VNF device. Okay, so in that case, let me show that. So we have a modeling capability under the definition type, under the node types, we have VNF device capability. So under that VNF capabilities, then we have a netconf. Under that netconf, we have the capability called netconf to collect the important information such as login account source, target IP address, port number, connection type that we had. Okay. One issue that we faced with this with the capability is we can't have the property, okay, with respect to different nature of a connection. So if we want to have a different nature of connections, then we need to have n number of VNF netconf device modeling, one with the base authentication, one with SSL authentications, and one with different lookup authentication. So we may end up into multiple configurations for this same connection. Okay. So that creates a lot of complexity. So what happened? No, initially in order to sort it out for time being, what we made that dynamic nature of the connection. Okay, to the blueprints. We moved to blueprint, and under the blueprints that we had called definitions. Okay. So we had called a definitions. DSL definitions. Under the definitions, we have a dynamic REST endpoint, a dynamic source. So we had this kind of structure. Our first thing is to solve this kind of a hard-coded nature connection property. In order to simplify and flexible, just we move to the DSL kind of nature, where we try to model that. That's fine for time being. But what happens, one other issue that we had, it's like, one is with respect to performance and another one is with respect of understanding what kind of type that we are trying to have, and we don't have the proper definition. Since it's a DSL, it's a free form and so nature, so we don't have that proper way of communicating what all the properties, what natures, what kind of stuff that we are trying to deal with that. So that's the one problem with the DSL kind of defining the connection property. And moreover, we started building the UI, okay, keeping in that assumption, stating that we are going to embed this property inside the DSL definition. So that's the reason we need to, we are in position to urge and try to implement a standard so that the impact will be minimal, and then later point of time we don't want to migrate that existing blueprints to the standard relationship model. That's the reason we are trying to bring upfront and immediately into an effect to bring to the standard architecture. These are all the problems that we have, and we need to take it in a take some solution or find some solution in order to sort it out. Let me pass here to take some questions if you have. You understand that what is the problem, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now how we want to solve that problem? It's like in our case we have a REST. Okay, REST with the multiple natures we have. One is with SSL base token, base auth, and then different kind of mechanisms. Similarly, we have a database also, multiple database, so MySQL, MariaDB, and so many things that will come into picture. And similarly, SSH connections also, one may have a SSH connections with certain kind of configuration, certain users and passwords, okay, which may involve expressions also. It is, if you try to look into that, this is not only the hard-coded property, which tries to involve that expression also. So it means like it has to support that expressions so that it could identify and and resolve that information during the processing time. Okay, so we need a definite mechanism. So that's the reason we introduce one more thing called relationship. Okay, so similar to that node type, node template, we have a relationship type and a relationship template. Okay, so in this case, the relationship type will come here completely. Say for an example, inside your model, if you are trying to use a certain connection, okay, certain endpoint connection, so always how it relates, say for an example, we are having a one node and then we are having another node. It may be a device node or any other node which possesses a capability of a particular connection. Okay, right now we are not bothered about that particular type of connections leaving as it is a generic because we don't want to disturb that lot existing nature. So that's the reason we are not defining in a relationship pattern. At least we are trying to define in a relationship model. Later point of time, if you want, you can make those relationships, okay, using that capabilities and requirements, you can make that. But right now, what we are trying to solve, it's like we are trying to solve how to collect that data and how to identify what kind of endpoint connections that we are trying to do. Okay, so in this case, assume that we have two different nodes, and one node is a device which possesses SSH capability, and another node which is nothing but a consumer or client, which is related with a relationship, okay, called connect to. The connect to relationship, and that connect to relationship extends that property or what kind of connection that we are trying to deal with that. So all those implementation that we have here, it's, let me show that what all the possible combinations that we have right now in terms of relationship. So we have a folder called relationship. Under that relationship, we have certain things like a database. Okay, what we have: database, gRPC client, gRPC server, and then consumer, producer for messaging, and then NATs, and then REST client for connecting to REST clients, and then SSH for SSH. So depending upon that, if you're trying to introduce a new kind of protocol connection, then we want to define this relationship. Okay, and moreover, we don't want to hard code or complicate the process of defining the internal things also. Okay, say for an example, under the gRPC, we may have a TLS and then base auth. Okay, further we don't want to more complicate, and then we don't want to more stricten that data types for that. So for that reason, what we have done is a generic property called a connection config. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to say that it's a connection config is that property, and it is defined as a map. So in this case, it is defined as a map. So what is map? Okay, here I want to tell that what is the definition for map here. Okay, and I saw that a lot of codes, that definition of the map is completely different. Meanwhile, I want to insist that what is the meaning of the map here. Okay, let me talk about the JSON. The JSON type, it's a static JSON content. Okay, so here assume that in this model, okay, so in this model, okay, if you try to define that property, okay, pure without expression, okay, here you could see that get input, right? So this is expression, right? So without expression, if you try to define a property, it means like a static property which doesn't have a expressions, then that is treated as a JSON. Okay, that is treated as a JSON. If you feel that you are going to have a property and then that property has its expression, so it means like a dynamic thing inside that, then it is called a map. So what that some of that assumptions I saw that, okay, they use that map for a collection property, okay, or a collection or a group of complex property, okay, collection property. So I want to clarify that map, it's not a collection. It may be a collection of properties, but that is coming under complex type of dynamic properties and expressions. Is it clear, or I want to give a more explanation?
A question, Brinda. So you are saying that if we are using some expression and all, instead of using JSON or custom data type, we can use map.
Yeah.
So that we can use the expression there. But what I'm saying, asking is, what if we don't have any expression? Still, can we use map?
Yeah, still we can use that map. Okay, assumption in future you are going to convert into map. That is the reason. No, just one more thing. Let me open that resource resolution or the dictionary, right? So let me open that dictionary. Any dictionary with input-output mapping, ADB. Yeah, see here. So this can be treated as JSON or a map. Okay, this can be treated as a JSON or a map. So right now the assumption it's treated as a JSON. But the problem is like here we are hard coding the value. The assumption it's like we are trying to resolve that value here. So it means like a VNF input type, it's nothing but here actually the indication it's nothing but here this expression. You're understanding that, right? Right now, we are looking from the context by default throughout that property. That's the reason we are not giving an expression here. But later point of time, okay, say for an example, this can be expression, or this can be it's like a partial or split, or take that subset of that particular property, or you are getting it, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, this can be converted into an expression. So that is the reason input key mapping we treated as a map, or we defined as a map already. Okay, and similarly like a output key mapping also. Okay, so this can be a JSON. If it is a JSON means then we are not going to put this as an expression. It is going to be a hard-coded value. Okay, if it is a JSON, then this is going to be an expression. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Even you guys remember that earlier I said that instead of having this value, put a dollar symbol in front of that, so that we can understand that this is an expression. Otherwise, this won't be treated as an expression. It is treated as an hard-code value. So one thing is what we can say is like, okay, I understand that, okay, I'm going to look into the property. Instead of that, I can put that it dot something like that, okay, $it dot something like that, or enclosing in a bracket. So in that case, it gives that definition, meaning that it is an expression, okay? You're clear? So that I can pass that hard-coded value also, or I can pass that expression value also. That is also possible. That's the point I'm trying to say. Okay, say for an example, I want to pass some value here, hard-coded value. So right now I don't have way to differentiate that hard-coded value or expression value. Okay, am I clear, or you're?
Yes.
Okay, still we need the discussion. So that is the reason now. As far as possible, if we try to modify this as an expression, that will be good immediately, at least for Frankfurt. Why? Because later point of time it will be very tough to define that hard-coded value or expression value in this case. Okay, that is later point of we will take the decision. But I'm trying to compare that difference between the JSON and the map. Okay, so that is the reason we have defined as a map, and then map won't come under the collection property. I saw that collection. Even I made the mistake, I believe that. Okay, I made that mistake, but I didn't convey that message properly. That's the reason it treated as a map, and then unit test cases are written in that certain use cases. And the two test cases I commented that, okay, because they had the wrong assumptions and then they put that wrong value. That is the reason I commented. Okay, so we want to understand that, okay, this definition is defined as a map, and that definition you can see it in a node type, right? Okay, so we have a node type and a resource source. Yeah, source input, or source list. In that, okay, we have an input mapping called map. Okay, we have a map. So in that case, we don't want entry schema also. Okay, so only map, you can define that map, and then map assumption is always nothing but the key value is a string, and then value may be an expression object or any type. So it may be any type. Okay, so this may be any type, or at least that I could say that the type may be a JSON. Okay, so JSON means it's like it may be any type. Okay, that is a definition here. Okay, so instead of type you can put a JSON, but what am I trying to bring here, it's like if it is a map, then we don't want to enter schema there. That is another important thing that we want to make sure that later point of time. Okay, not now. Okay, so here we defined as a map. Similarly, what we have done is like we have done that, okay, defined as a map here. So this is the actual map definition. So it means like we are not going to deal with, or it is going to be configuration, okay, connection config, dynamic property with expression. That is all about that. Okay, so those implementation we have changed. It's like it involves a lot of changes, and then we made. Luckily, it's like one good thing that we made. It may help in terms of policy definitions also. Okay, earlier we had only node type resolutions, node template resolutions. Now we have a definition-based resolutions also. Okay, later it will be easy for extending the policy types. If you try to bring the policy definitions or any other definitions later point of time, that framework is more expensive. Okay, now coming back to that, how to define it in a model. Okay, it's clear, right? Till now we are clear, right?
Yes, Brinda.
Okay. how we want to define it in a model, okay? Say for an example, these are all nothing but the important thing is like we are trying to move from DSL definition, the connection, at least only the connection property, not the connection. Another important reason is like a performance issue, okay? So what we are trying to do, right now the DSL, we are trying to look into the DSL and then we are trying to navigate to the sub-property and then looking for if there is any expression or not, and then we are trying to, it's like one more performance issue we had. So that's the reason we avoid it. Right now we can avoid very easily just by segregating to the relationship template now. Now we want to define a relationship. Yeah, I think where I have implemented relationship template, this master. Okay, so for this we have a template. So we want to define a template here, right? Okay, so we have a relationship type. We want to define that relationship template. Whether I have defined it here or not, let's take an example. Okay, we have similar to node template. We have another tag or another field called relationship template. Okay, so you can see the structure. Okay, under the structure we have a topology. Under the topology earlier we had only node template, inputs and workflow. Now you could see the relationship templates also. Okay, so one is the relationship type. That relationship type comes under the topology section. Okay, and the topology section is like separated out. That is either we import through that imports. Okay, you could see that now relationship type has the import. So this will be resolved with that import. And for that we have a relationship type. Now here I can define that any property. Okay, I can have that CLI property or any property or any device or any kind of property. I can include 2 different connections, 3 different connections with that name. Okay, so this is nothing but earlier we use the DSL property name. So that can be a name, and the type defines that what kind of connection, whether it is SSH or CLI or gRPC or messaging. Okay, all those connections. One thing is we want to define that connection config. And the connection config, okay, since we defined as a map, it is nothing but you can have a number of keys and you can have a hard-coded value or expression value, the same thing. So now it is a JSON format, okay, it is not like embedded string format. If you try to look into the DSL earlier it was embedded string format, okay. So it was the embedded string format. This one is the embedded string format, okay. Now this is like a JSON format with the property definitions. Okay, it has a property, and then the property has its all this information. So, and it has also an expression. So this is more dynamic, right? So you can define any property. So here we are not mandating that. So you can put that definition either on a client side, that UI side, what kind of rendering form that you want to have, you can define. You can define a custom property, because we don't want to strict that, because case by case we don't want to define for all the properties, all the cases. Since that's the reason it's a freestyle, you can define a property style. Okay, for template based modeling, then it's our own assumption and then own thing that we want to think in that sense. Okay, how we want to resolve that, or what kind of property names it should come. But from DSL Kotlin DSL perspective, it is more easy. Okay. You understand that this point, right, till now?
So what I can see is that this is very similar to the DSL implementation, where you're adding the type of connection, and then you define the properties of that type.
Exactly.
So it's pretty much exactly like DSL. So, but you're doing this instead of on the DSL, you're doing on the relationship templates, right?
Exactly. The same thing. Okay, as I said, explained, DSL is not meant for that. Okay, this gives a proper type, what type that I'm trying to deal with that. So it gives a lot of flexibility in terms of validation, in terms of understanding that nature, or in terms of understanding the configuration. Because DSL is not meant for only for endpoint configuration. Okay, DSL is meant for, it's like a generic expression or content or any other freestyle format. Okay, not only for connection. Okay. So this kind of implementation necessity came once UI started designing the DSL. Okay, just keeping in an endpoint perspective. That is the reason this design came into picture. Or this kind of earlier we had the Tasca. For Tasca, we already have this kind. Only this way only we want to represent That's the reason we want to implement this kind of feature, okay, for our case. That's the reason it became necessary for us. Okay, and still we are supporting the DSL, but what I'm trying to say is like, okay, at least move to that relationship. Okay, so that is a cleaner way. Okay, if you are trying to design a UI, at least move in a cleaner way. Okay, yeah. Any other points, Yuri?
The only so from what I can see is that the relationship is a very it's a map definition, right? It doesn't have a definition. It's free form.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my only question is like when the users are creating these instances, are these instances persisted in some catalog so they can be reused?
Yeah, exactly. You can create a catalog. That's the only point that I'm trying to say, that I don't want to put it in a model. Why? Because it becomes a strict definition. Okay, and it will be difficult to enhance and create a modeling, because only the advantage with the purpose of the CDS is it's like a more extensible. We don't want the development time. Okay, sometimes we want to handle it inside the code itself or inside the script itself. It should be flexible enough to include that. That is a point we are keeping in mind. Okay, so that's the reason. You can define that model, okay, because its model is already defined. Okay, so whatever that REST template or SSH connection, we already have that. We already defined that, right? Okay, so we already defined that. Only thing is, it's a matter of creating a catalog. Okay, in your case, it's a matter of creating a catalog. Either it can be a client-side catalog, or it can be a server-side catalog, or just we can put it in a server and then we can retrieve that. But the problem is like, it shouldn't be a part of that model. If it is a part of the model or relationship type, then we need to define an n number of relationship types. It will create a lot of confusions, or in terms of changing that nature, okay, a lot of the things it will come into picture. So that is the reason we want to make it simple. The first migration is like from DSL to that relationship type migration. This is the first step, right? You are getting the point, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. So you're saying the catalog should be created, but it shouldn't be part of the model itself. It should be outside the model. Okay, all right.
Exactly.
And just one more thing. Can you go back to the definition you had for the relationship? The entry point for that is
definition or type? What you're saying?
the relationship template.
Okay. Right?
Yes. So this is CLI device properties. Where is this? This entry point is part of the node definition as well. Can you go up to the node definition?
Exactly. So it's a later point in future. I will tell them how it comes. Okay. But right now, to access this point, access this property. Okay. That I will explain that. Okay. Just hold for some time. Okay. I will explain that. I will come to that point. Okay. How to access.
Because the DSL was also used. It's used mainly for like I can say for data dictionary, right? There's an entry point. If you look at any data dictionary, we added entry point, and then there's a definition of the DSL entry point, right? So
no, data dictionary we don't have that DSL.
We do.
What is a DSL?
If you go to data dictionary definition, we had an entry point for the DSL itself. Give me one.
Okay. Okay. So that is nothing but not endpoint selector. Okay.
Endpoint selector, correct. There you go.
Okay. That endpoint selector is nothing but a name here. Okay. That is a name here. This name.
Right. So it's going to be CLI properties. So that's one place, right?
Yeah.
And the other place is also going to be part of your node definition, right?
Exactly. Okay. So that I will explain that. Okay. So this name you can have any names actually. Okay. So you can have any name. And later point of time, okay, in order to have or in order to map the relationship, for an example, from a particular component, you are trying to map a node or map a netconf device which possesses a capability. Okay, so in that case, what's the thing is, we want to connect from two nodes. Okay, using the relationship we want to connect. So how we want to connect? Okay, let me show that so DSL. See here. So here we have that. Okay. So here we have that. Okay, that netconf connection node. Okay. So we have that netconf connection node, we have the capability. The capability is like a source target capability. Okay, target capability, and then we have that node. What is the device node? Okay, that is a device node, and in this case we are trying to define that relationship type actually. Okay, so here it can be a relationship type or template. You are getting its point, right? So if it is a template, then it can understand this relationship can refer to this particular property. Okay, you get this point?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
How we are managing that requirements and capability. Okay, so in this case, say for an example, activate netcom. This is a component. In this component, this is nothing but a mere just a representation of how one component is related to the other component, right? So if you want to have a relationship, or if you want to denote that what is the relationship between these two components, that can be achieved with the requirements. That you know that, right?
Correct.
And then other component should have that, or device or other component should have the capabilities. Okay, other component should have the capabilities. Okay, so it means like in this case, the sample netconf device. Okay, so it is. Let me go to the sample netconf device.
Sample netconf device is the instance name?
Yeah, that is the device name, right? That is a device name. That device name possesses the capability called netconf capability. Okay, you're clear, right? Till now.
Yeah.
Okay, so earlier we defined the property here actually. Okay, you're getting it, right?
Yeah. This is what we did before. Yeah.
Yeah. Now this property can be represented in a relationship also. Okay, because it is from that endpoint perspective. Okay, so suppose for an example, certain things that we can define as a capability property on server side perspective, but from client side perspective, certain things we can't use the server property. We want to have a certain client level properties also. Okay, here the property, whatever we are trying to use, it's like a server boot up. Okay, server may have a different certs. Okay, to launch. Okay, that may be a public, that may be a private key, but from client side, we want to use a private key. So it means like two different properties that we need. One is on server side properties and another one client side properties. Okay, the server side properties that we are putting under the capabilities. It's like a mere technical term. I think you are getting it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So server side properties, it will be here, and to represent from one node to another node, so we are going to refer that particular node's capability. So that's where that's where it comes under requirements, right? Okay, one node depends on another node, and that is represented with the requirements, and then requirement has its name, and the requirement has its capability, what capability that we are referring, and the capability has this relationship. So this relationship can be type or it can be a template. Okay, but don't bother about right now. We are not going to deal this one. Okay, so how we are going to deal with that right now? The implementation is like from DSL we move to relationship. That is the only change that we made. Okay, so it is not a mandatory change. It is like a practice change. Okay, so if you want to define in a standard way, then define it in a relationship. That is the only thing that I'm trying to say. You're clear?
Yeah, that's clear to me.
Okay. So earlier, first initially we designed the requirement, but because of certain issues of a string it's like we need a more complex modeling or more understanding of that modeling. So what we thought it's like, and some node may not be referred directly. Some nodes refers internally like a script node. Okay, script node we can't define the capabilities and node upfront. Okay, so that is the case. We thought of having a DSL to define the connection property. Now, either that can be achieved with that relationship. That is the only point. Okay. Now coming back to that, okay, how it can be handled in a Kotlin DSL. Kotlin DSL is very simple. Okay. So Kotlin DSL has a you can define, so it gives a content assist and all kind of assist here. So you can define a same relationship property here, and then under that, this is okay, yeah. So this is a definition, right? This is not Kotlin. So here we are trying to define that relationship template. Okay. So since it is a Kotlin, you have all kind of upfront itself. We can get that all the relationship. Okay. So I can type a relationship type. I can define. I can see that all the relationship type. Okay. If what all the dependencies are there. So I could see the relationship type of SSH client. Okay. And then I could see the relationship template as well as type also. Both I could see that. So once you type that, then automatically you can come here and then it provides like what are the authentication factors that I have. So right now I have a base auth. Okay. So if you have a different auth, then automatically you can have that. Okay. So you can define that. Say for an example, relationship. Relationship template SSH gRPC. Okay. So say for an example, I want to be connect to that gRPC client. Okay. So in that case, so I can define that selector name. So this is nothing the selector name. Okay, so whatever I am putting that is the selector name, endpoint selector, and then there is a description, and then I can select that what auth. Okay, I can have a base auth or TLS auth or token auth. So I can select the TLS token auth, and then I can give the token auth ABCD. So that's it. Okay, so DSL wise. You have a content assist and all kind of implementation because already we have implemented the DSL for all these steps. Okay, and if it is of a UI, then I think you need to have a catalog model and then you want to get that value and then you want to do that. And even adding that relationship type also is very simple. Okay, it's like an enrichment process. We know that we are not doing that enrichment here, so I can add that relationship type. Okay, gRPC client. That's it. Like one. So it adds like an entire definition for that finally. Okay. So it's very simple in terms of DSL perspective, Kotlin DSL perspective. It made very more flexible and then it's very simple and then content assist and then we can compile right away itself and then we can check whether it is valid or not. Yeah, that's all I want to explain about finally. So these are all the changes that we made. So define the relationship and yeah, and how to access that inside that code, right? Now we want to access that inside the code, right? Inside the script. How to access that? So for this, we have a CLI. So here we have that one more thing called relationship property. So inside that, whoever extends this abstract script function or script function, okay, they have that flexibility or they can automatically get the relationship property. So in that, you can give that endpoint name and then what property. Here by default is a connection config. So you can give any name or you can write a one more utility on top of that to get the connection config of that relationship. Okay, so in this way, okay, we have written a service to retrieve the property and finally you will get that device information. Earlier we used to get from that DSL property. Now we can get that information directly from the relationship property directly from Blueprint services.
Very good.
Okay, that's all I have. So any other points that we want to discuss?
I think this is clear, Brenda. The only thing I'll try a few use cases with this and get back to you if I see.
Exactly. And one more thing for your confirmation, I'm not deprecating the DSL. Only thing is the practice. Okay, we want to move that connection practice to relationship. Okay, we don't want to do a connection configuration properties inside the DSL because that is not meant for the DSL.
Very good, Brenda. I will start talking to Sebastian about this as well when he's back. I think he'll be back next week.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. That's all I want to tell. And then map also. Okay, you want to tell that the purpose of map also. Okay.
Yes. I'll make sure he gets this recorded and we'll review it with him as well. Thank you, Brenda.
Probably just try to think like in